I've learned a lot from our next guest, and I think more than anything, Coach Jace Riley has kind of lit a fire underneath my rear end and made me somewhat accountable, Coach. So I'm thankful to you, and I'm so thankful you join us on the show. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's an honor to be on the show. Uh, when I hear people tell me that I've inspired them in some way or given them some sort of knowledge, I mean that's what I do. Why what I do? Um, I had three boys, all played sports, and I basically learned a lot in high school that there's a lot that a lot of parents don't know. So I essentially became the guy I wish I knew.
So true. It's the benefit of hindsight and wisdom, you know. I want to ask you this because we have a global audience. Please put yourself into context for us. You've said, look, you got three boys that competed in high school. What was the inspiration for doing what you're doing on social? Because it's grown, you got a pretty wide reach.
Yeah, it was basically my son. So I have three boys, married, three sons. The oldest is now, he just had a birthday the other day. He's 26, and then my youngest is 20.
Hmm.
They all played sports, wrestling, football, soccer, basketball. I coached many teams, like dad coach, right? Boys club, uh, coached at the junior high level for my son's basketball team, assistant coach. But I really learned that as I went along that there's more to sports than just practice and games.
Hmm.
There's all kinds of things. That the mental aspect is huge. And about 4 or 5 years ago, the mental part really came into play with social media,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
And so YouTube, a lot of motivational videos and stuff like that. And there was a big grind 24/7 mentality, right? You got to go, don't stop, don't quit. And realistically, that's just not possible, right? You have to have recovery time, you have to have days off. And so everybody was telling these kids what they needed to do, but they weren't telling them how to do it.
Yeah.
So I took a step back, started doing some research, and figured out, like there's so many aspects of sport. Sleep is so huge, and it's just widely ignored by student athletes, right? Nutrition, performance nutrition, um, just things like that, mental mindset. So I started doing some research, and I had a couple of examples of some kids that went to my son's school, and I saw real wasted potential, right? And coaches do what coaches know, right? So if you have a coach and he's not the best coach, don't blame the coach. He's doing the best that he can, right? I highly doubt that he's being paid six figures. He's probably got another job. He's got a family. He's trying to work you guys into his schedule and stuff like that. So you can't blame the coach if you're not a good player. It's really on you. Practices for game strategy and team strategy, everything else is all on you. And if you don't know what to do, you usually end up blaming the coach. Coach doesn't like me. He's a dad coach, whatever. And that's just kind of a cop out. So I figured if I gave the kids the messages that they needed to hear and gave them, the pathway and gave them instructions and systems, it would make all the difference in the world.
Mm. You know what? You prompt so many thoughts in my head. The first one I'll just react to or respond to your observation there because I've always been a golf instructor. I was a college NCAA golf coach for over 20 years. And it's uncanny to me how, and it seems like this is proliferated. And for the folks who are downloading this to get your game better, trust me, it's athletic principles across the board, whether you golf or baseball or football or tennis, they all apply. Anyway, but it seems to me, coach, that nowadays it's sort of proliferating where if something goes wrong, the coach is blamed, and the onus on the player is almost sort of going away a little bit. And I still give golf lessons, even though I'm full time in broadcasting. It's easy. Like when I was teaching full time on the PGA Tour, first person to go is the caddy, next person to go is the coach, then the agent goes, and then finally the spouse goes, which is sad. But that's kind of because we're deferring blame. So I'd love your insight there before we dive into it.
Yeah, it's in today's society, it's really easy to shift the blame, right? And as a human, you don't naturally want to hold yourself accountable. I mean, it's easier to blame the other guy, right? Coach isn't putting me in. But what I want to ask you is if I didn't know you at all and you wrote down what you did for a week and gave it to me, would I know you want to be a high level athlete or not? And there's nothing wrong with just wanting to play the game. If you're in high school and you just want to be on the team and you just want to go on trips because it's cool and like that's awesome, right? But you can't have a mundane level of um exactly how do I want to put it? You can't not be willing to do the work and then blame people for the results you don't get.
Yeah. Amen. Hey, this is so true. Before we dive in, you've mentioned I'd picked 7 things that all golfers slash athletes, because golfers, you got to be an athlete to play it at a good level
For
now.
sure.
I mean, even at the highest level, it's non-negotiable. If you're wanting to play in college, anyone watching this, these points that I've picked out here from Coach Riley are non-negotiable. Even if you want to win your club championship, you've got to kind of have to outwork your competition, because talent will only take you somewhat so far. But I have noticed as I scrolled through your Instagram feed, there's um, a lot of reference to Kobe Bryant.
Mm-hmm.
And there was one quote that I'm going to give to you from Kobe, and I want you to kick us off with this. And this is, if you do not believe in yourself, no one will do it for you. And I feel like we live in this era right now with golfers, especially, where it's like, oh, I haven't played very well. Someone tell me I'm good. And instead of just going, it's coming from me, I'm the author of my own destiny. Let's go, please.
Yeah, Kobe, those are some big shoes to fill. And he is, if you look at why Kobe is revered in the way that he is, it's he does the work.
Mm.
He's the guy who does the work. Now, a lot of athletes do the work. You know, there's greats in every sport and every form of life, business, relationships. Sports is kind of universal, the lessons that you learn. But Kobe really, his mentality was nobody's going to do it for you. Nobody's going to do it for you. And he's right. A lot of times people were like, why don't you pass the ball? And there's some quotes, and he's like, well, you show up late for practice, you leave early. Why would I give you the ball? Like, you're not putting in the work.
Yeah.
And so I think that, you know, he really encapsulates the warrior mentality. Nobody's going to do it for you. And if you're not willing to do the work, then don't complain about the things that you don't get.
Yeah. There was something, in fact, I saw it on your feed where Kobe golfers, international guests. If you don't know Kobe Bryant, he's a legendary basketball player, played for the Lakers. Um, he apparently went up for a shot, a game winning basketball shot, and a camera flashed in his eye, and he missed. Yeah, you laugh. Folks watching on YouTube, you'll see Coach Riley laughing. Word is, according to your research here, that he went out and practiced for hours on end with lights flashing in his eyes after that to make sure that that would never happen again. Now that's covering all your bases, in my opinion.
That's a little bit of an urban legend, right? That one's been around. There's been some where they say he's, went in practice with lights flashing. There was another post where he stared at the sun for 6 hours. I mean, it's tongue in cheek, but it really is. It takes a weakness that you have or that you experienced, and then figuring out how to deal with it. Like, don't just poo-poo it and say, oh, well, that happened. Like, say, you know what, that could happen again in a
Mhm.
game that matters even more, or at another time in my life. And if I don't learn from this lesson, then what's the point, right? And there's a quote, I don't know who said it. Some people said Einstein said it. I have no idea who really said it, but it says, you know, smart people learn from their own mistakes,
Mhm.
but geniuses learn from others' mistakes. And if you can take lessons that other people have learned, which is, I'm a big fan of reading, right? Not a lot of people read nowadays. Well, the kids, I mean, some people read, but the kids mostly videos and screen time and stuff like that. But if you can take a lesson that somebody else has learned and then apply that in your life, you're going to save months or years of trial and error. And I mean, there's no reason to reinvent the wheel. No matter what sport you play and what level you're at, take the greatest person who you consider the greatest in that sport. At one point in their life, they were exactly where you are right now, skill level, talent level. The difference between you and them is they just kept going and they just kept progressing. And you can do the same thing, right? And so if you really look at, things that impact your game, maybe you're really tired. You had a bad game and you're tired. If you don't look back and try to figure out why were you really tired, you're bound to make that same mistake again.
Amen, preacher. This is so true. I guess that's a perfect segue to one of something you you almost sound like you're a bit militant about if I watch your feed. And folks, if you go to at 6 a.m. underscore practice, the vibes that it gives you, and then when you look at Coach Riley over here, you look a lot more that guy on there is a real coach. I'm kind of nervous of him. You're a lot more welcoming. So I was happy to see your smiling face. But you talk
Yeah.
about hydration and sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And whether you're a club golfer or whether you're a tournament golfer, look, this is reality. The club golfer's hydration is a few beers at the turn. But if you're really wanting to win the bets or whatever it might be, it would behoove you to stay well hydrated. So please, your take there.
So the human body is incredible.
Yeah.
It's you look at the brain, you look at your muscles, you look at your nervous system, skeletal system. It's a work of art, right?
Mhm.
However, it needs certain things to perform. And I love the term you used earlier, non-negotiables. Hydration is non-negotiable. Proper sleep is non-negotiable. Now, yes, let me rephrase that. It's non-negotiable if you want to be the best or if you want to continue to improve your game. You can stay up all night playing video games and then get a few hours of sleep and go to practice and have an off day or whatever. But hydration is so key. And a lot of people nowadays, they're they're drinking energy drinks, right? Which aren't really hydration. I mean, that's a whole different topic altogether. They're not getting enough sleep. Like I see a lot of posts nowadays because school's starting up, where people are like, and the kids are like, getting up at going to school at 8 a.m. is too early. Like kids need more sleep. They need more time. School should start at 10 or whatever. Okay. Well, here's what I bet you. If school starts at 8, you're probably going to bed around 2 or 3,
Yeah, exactly.
maybe, right? So if school started at 10, you wouldn't go to bed at 2 or 3. You'd stay up till 3 or 4. Like you're adjusting. The problem isn't when you get up, it's when you go to bed, right? So sleep cycles, sleep is an absolute science. Same with hydration. There's all these tiny details. Like everybody knows that you should get your rest and everybody knows you should get water. But the greats know how much you should drink, why you should drink, how much sleep you should get, and what your body does. Because greatness is in the details. Everybody knows the basics, like everybody does. That's not a big deal. But the details of why it impacts you and how it impacts you, once you learn those things, it's very hard to go back to your old habits. If you know why sleep is so critical, especially if you're a student, the better sleep you get, the better you're able to retain the information that you studied today.
Mm.
And if you know that I need to increase my GPA, and so I'm going to forego a couple hours of screen time at night because my goal is to play at a higher level after high school, you're not going to regress into those old habits once you lock them in at any level.
So true. It's why I wear these whoops, and so many golfers do. Here's a personal anecdote. I've realized that because I'm getting the data from this, that a few glasses of wine in the evening would not is actually not turning into better sleep. The recovery was actually worse. Anyway, but that's a personal story, a mea culpa, if you will. Okay, that's the sleep. Let's now really put your coach hat on because you kind of been nice now. So
Okay.
I'm going to hit you with some of your posts that were the sort of gut punches, if you will. And here's the first one, and this applies to everybody. No player in any situation wishes they had practiced less. Now, that was the post. And if you take time to really mull over this, and then all of the golfers listening to this, whether you're a tournament golfer or not, we're all competitors. And when it came down to that shot that you had to hit and you haven't practiced it, ostensibly you're wishing and hoping for the result to go your way. So the odds are not stacked against you. So please elaborate on your statement there.
So when you're going through your daily habits and your routine, you're going to make these choices. And your life is based on the choices that you make. And people say you can't predict the future, you have no idea. I say you kind of can predict the future because habits give you specific results if you follow systems, right? If you do A, B, and C, you know you're going to get D, E, and F, right? It's just the way it is. If you eat McDonald's every day, you're probably going to get fat.
Yeah, go, go.
Right. So if you're in a position where you're in a game situation, so let's take it to golf here, and you need to make this putt,
Mhm.
right? And you're looking at it at that time, you're never going to wish, you know what, I took, and I don't know what golfers do, maybe it's like, let's equate it to basketball, you're going to take 500 putts a day or
Yeah.
whatever, right? You're never going to wish before that putt, you know, I could have probably got away with 250 strokes this week,
That's right.
right? You're really wishing if you didn't hit your 500 that you did. And if you hit your 500, you're probably wishing maybe I could have done 6. I could have cut off going out with the guys and got a few more hours in. It's very difficult to see the bigger picture, which is why most human beings they live for the moment, right? YOLO, right? You only live once. And so you can take that one of two ways. You can take it, you only live once. So do what you want now and forget the rest of forget the future. Or you can say, I've only got one future, so I better put the work in now. It's really a mindset of how you view what you want to accomplish in the world.
If you have YOLO, you're going to have a case of FOMO in a few years' time when you when you're missing out on all of the trappings of success. And
For real.
here's another one. I really love this. This is the kind of thing that could be framed in any sort of a gym or golf studio, whatever the case might be. And your post was, winners aren't better winners, they are better losers. And someone said to my daughter the other day, he's like, you're very talented, you've got it all going for you, but you're really going to win big when you've learned how to lose properly. So please go there.
You're never going to win them all.
Yeah.
Never, no matter how good you are. You're always going to have slumps. You're always going to have an off day. And you can do everything that you needed to do, and somebody might just be a little better than you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something you have no control over.
Yeah.
So everybody loves to win, and winning's easy, right? Hey, hooray for me, right? We won the game. I won the tournament, whatever it is. It's what you deal with the loss. And I remember one time my son's the varsity team, they didn't do well in the playoffs. They didn't win the championship. And when they came out, I could see how some guys were taking it and I could see how other guys were taking it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very emotional, right? And they're all upset and of course you're going to be, but what do you do with that emotion?
Yeah.
Do you wallow in self-pity? Do you blame the other guy? Do you blame the coach? Do you blame your teammates for not being prepared? Or do you look inside yourself and say, what can I do so that doesn't happen again?
Mm. Good stuff.
Because it's always easy to blame the other guy. And those are the things you can't control. You might play on teams where you don't win a game all year. But if you take that and say, well, there's no reason to get better because we're never going to win, well, then you're never going to make it to the next level because those guys aren't going to be your teammates forever. That's not going to be your coach forever. That's not going to be your school forever. And so, how do you internally deal with losing really determines how good of a winner you become.
Yeah. And as it pertains to golf, the golfers know this. It's like you failing the lion's share of the time. Tiger Woods, arguably the most successful golfer of all time, maybe not the greatest. That's a different podcast. I mean, his winning percentage was in the teens. The tournaments he won, So it's fall down 7 times, get up 8. That's the big. I think it's the resilience to your statement there too, to have that moxie to go. Well, that's it. Let's dust myself off and go and try again.
Yeah, you're definitely right when you talk about, you talk about Tiger Woods. You just take it to baseball. If you're batting 300, you're killing it. You're probably a Hall of Famer. That
Mhm.
means you only hit 3 out of 10 times, 30 out of 100. So, how do you deal with those strikeouts, and how do you deal with all of those, you know, quote unquote bad games or bad at bats or whatever? And once, like you said, once you figure out how to internalize that and learn from those mistakes, your game changes forever. Because again, you're never going to win everything. You're just not. You might get outclassed, you might get beat. Like I like to say, there's a difference between losing and getting beat. So getting beat means you had no chance in the game. You were just outclassed. The guy's bigger than you, faster than you, like you had no chance of winning. Losing means that you had an opportunity to win the game. And either by some mistake on your team, some wrong decision, maybe the ball went funny, something like that, but you were in the game, right? And so if you can differentiate between getting beat and losing, and then how to internalize losing and make sure that whatever mistake you made, like I said earlier, if you're tired before a game, look at what you did, which is why journaling is such a big thing. You have a record of tracking stuff.
Yeah, that is one of the things I picked out. Here's the statement: don't waste another year doing things that aren't working. Practice and game day journaling are essential to quicker improvement. And we live
Abs-
in an era of data. I mean, there's data for everything right now. But it's like statistics. They're like a lamppost to a drunk person. Some use it for illumination, the rest use it for support, right? So you can find a stat to massage any argument you want. But this journaling, and the journaling is not just keeping the stats. It's be like, what was I feeling
mhm.
when I was over that shot? Where was my mind? What was my mind like coming into all those sorts of things that if you really get into the immeasurables inside the head and inside the soul here, that's where you start to uncover the gold, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And so your brain will lie to you.
Yeah.
You will come off a game, and if you don't write down what you were feeling and you're not tracking your metrics, right? Because metrics are so, like you said, data is key. Data is king actually nowadays. Um, but if you just play a game and then a day or two later think about it, your brain's going to fill in these blank spots and you're not going to remember correctly. And I mean, that's just the way your brain works, right? You have so much, especially nowadays with input coming in.
Yeah, I was going to interrupt you real quick, and I don't want you to lose that train of thought because when you said your brain is sort of selective, depending on how you bred yourself, you can remember only the bad stuff or only the good stuff, and it sort of depends. So you can lie, and oftentimes with a lot of athletes I've encountered, and I'm sure you have too, the lie they're telling themselves is something on the negative side of performance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the human brain is very strange, right? And you can program yourself to, like you said, either remember all the negative stuff or remember all the positive stuff. And the key is to success is a little bit of both.
Yeah.
You got to remember this, you got to remember that, which is why journaling is so critical, right? So if you look at what you did that week going up into the match, right? What was your sleep like? What was your nutrition like? Was there something emotional that happened to you, before the game? I mean, did you me, I love true sports movies, right? If it's true story and it's a sports movie, when I watch those, like I watched McFarland
Mm.
a couple weeks ago, that movie was so emotionally draining for me. And I'm not ashamed, man. I'll watch a good movie and I'll cry because I know what that athlete's feeling, right? And so the if you haven't seen McFarland, spoiler alert, the key takeaway that I took from that movie was there was a guy who wasn't very good and he wasn't the best on the team. And in fact, he was the slowest guy on the team.
Yeah.
But cross country is a team sport. they calculate everybody's place, right? And you get points for it. And so that guy didn't need to win. He only needed to place so high up in the race. And so even though you're not the best person, even though you're not the best athlete, you're not the strongest, you're not the fastest, you can contribute to that team winning by doing the best that you can. And that was such an important message, I think, to a lot of kids who maybe they're on the bench, maybe they're not the starter. So they automatically think, well, if I'm not the best player, then I'm not contributing to the team. That is such a the wrong mindset to have. You can contribute to the team. I mean, Rudy's my favorite movie. I love Rudy. He contributed to the team by helping the starting line get ready for the defense. And he was just a bench dude. He wasn't even on the bench. He was on the practice squad. That role to the team is so vital. There are no small parts or pieces or anything to any successful unit. Every little thing counts 150%.
I want to put a bow on that with a personal observation from my days as a college golf coach, because 5 players on the NCAA team travel, and you typically got a team of sort of 9 to 12 players, 10-ish nowadays. And there's been more than one instance where I've had a guy who's been in the 6, 7, 8 slot, periodically would get on the starting lineup. But that individual, he was first at the practice. He would run the hardest in the laps. He'd work out the hardest. He'd make the best grades in the classroom. And to a certain extent, it sort of lifted the caliber of the team, because the starters couldn't rest on their laurels, if you will, because they kind of knew it was coming, even if you didn't. But you get that sense that there's someone in the rearview mirror, and there's nothing like accountability when there's someone right behind you and looking over your shoulder a little bit.
Yeah, one of my original quotes back in the day that because I came up with like 16 flagship quotes of what 6 a.m. practice was and stuff. And the quote was, "Do you hear those footsteps? That's your competition catching up to you."
Yeah, preach,
It
brother.
does. It doesn't stop. It does not stop. And there's another saying, and it's like life's like a bicycle.
Mm-hmm.
You're either pedaling hard, or you're coasting, or you're going downhill. That's it. It's not it's not rocket science, man. Success begets success. And you're right. If you've got there's nothing more inspiring to great players than somebody who is trying to increase their game to help the great player achieve their ultimate goal, which is winning. It's winning the tournament, winning the match, winning the playoffs, whatever it is. And I have found normally that true leaders, truly great players, never put somebody down who's beneath them. If anything, they'll try to help them become better. Now, I have seen, and this really bothers me, I've seen guys on varsity teams that make fun of the JV players, like, because obviously they're not as good. Maybe their shot's really wrong. They've got this shot that's just a horrible shot. Instead of laughing at that guy and making fun of him and stuff, why don't you take 10 minutes out of your day and go help him fix that shot? That's your role as a leader, not to be the best, but to bring others up to your level. There's room at the mountaintop. Everybody thinks the apex is like there's only room for one. Nah, that mountain's bigger than you. There's room for everybody who wants to put in the work up there.
And the rising tide does lift all the boats. It truly does. You've segued into another point that I'd circled, and it's about consistency. And when I give lessons and I meet a new client and I say, okay, tell me about you, and I learn the ins and the outs and everything. And I'm like, what's the goal? And I typically hear consistency. Now, the truth of golf is it's an imperfect game. Consistency in your golf swing is not going to happen. Consistency in your approach to the results and what you're doing is certainly key. And so when you posted this, it caught my attention, and you said, consistency is not a habit, it's a skill. It's this, it's the skill all habits are created from, because without it, habits never form. And I was like, yeah, for anyone wanting to improve their golf, and you wanting to change motor patterns or change your adjust your golf swing, whatever it is, change your putting stroke, the consistency is a skill to get you to a place where you're forming this habit and you're doing it consistently because most of us golfers, we like, oh, this is not working. Then you try another thing. And then the next thing, you're just this mixed up pretzel, as Max Homer used the term with me. You're like a pretzel of everything going on in your mind and your body, and you don't know where the top or you don't know how to come out of it. So the consistency in breeding the skill is massive.
100%. So a lot of people are like, consistency is the habit. No, the habit is getting quality sleep. The habit is eating the right foods at the right time. The habit is going to the gym when you don't want to. The habit is putting in the 500 strokes a day. That's the habit. To achieve that habit, you have to be consistent with it. And so a lot of people are, you're right, they shiny object syndrome. And I'm just as guilty as this as anything else, right? Like I'm trying to grow my platform. So it's like, oh, I got to put out a YouTube video. Oh, wait, I got to put out a podcast. Wait, I got to put out some more posts. Wait, I got to do an interview. Wait, I got to actually take care of myself. I'm all over the place, right? So when you pull back and you look at what's my ultimate goal, right? To help as many as people as possible. So I look at what moves the needle the most. And so what moves the needle the most for me is being consistent with my posts. That grows my audience. That helps me reach out to other people.
Mm-hmm.
And so you look at how do you be consistent? And consistency is a skill, right? And so I've put together, if you look at my Instagram bio, I have a stand store, right? And if you click on the stand store, there's a consistency, how to master consistency. And it's a skill. You have to do certain things in certain order to get certain results, like baking a cake, right? A lot of people are like, oh, I just want this delicious cake, but nobody gives it to me. No, I gave you flour and eggs, and what temperature do you put the oven on, right? That's everything you need to be a cake eater. It's up to you to put them in the right order at the right time to get this result. And if you do that consistently, you can eat cake all day long for the rest of your life. And I wouldn't advise it. I'm just cakes just because I love some cake.
Oh,
But it's basically, what are you doing every day? And I'll go back to what I said earlier. If you wrote down what you did every day, would I know you want to be a high level athlete? And that's where most people, I don't have the time. I don't have the time. 24/7, 365, the greatest player in the world, the richest man in the world, the poorest man in the world, the average player, we all have the same amount of time. We're all given. Now, are some of us at different stages in life and have different opportunities? Absolutely. But what are you doing with the gifts that you have? What are you doing with the resources you have? What are you doing to, you can't make the time, you have to find the time.
Yeah.
Because time is our ultimate resource, right? It's finite. You can never, you only have so much time on this planet. And so what you do with your day is 100% critical to where you're going to be in 2 weeks, 2 years, 20 years, whatever it is.
Yeah. I said this to someone. I had a physical trainer on the other day, and I said, I'm now going to lead a charge where I'm the guy that doesn't just save the post. I save the post and then go and do what it's saying that I should do, because therein lies the magic. Two more things very quickly, because I've kept you for a long time. Yeah, they kind of go hand in glove. First off, and the key to the statement is you use the word cycle. You said setbacks and slumps are going to happen. It's part of the cycle. Now, I've heard setbacks and slumps are going to happen. Every coach, every parent, everyone has said that at some stage to someone else or even themselves. But then you write, it's a part of the cycle. I want to investigate that statement with you, please.
So a cycle has different stages, right? So you practice, you have a good game, you practice, you have a bad game, right? That's where people get into the slump. Oh, I'm in a slump. If you know it's a cycle, you know it's going to change. It's part of the process, right? Whether it's a 4-step process, 10-step process, whatever it is. And so if you know the slump is going to end, if you put the work in, then the slump just becomes part of the cycle. And it's not a downfall to you. It's like, okay, I'm in a slump. I know what that means. I know what that means to my game. I know what I need to do to be steady, consistent, right? We'll go back to being consistent. And if you know exactly what you need to do, let me just phrase that. People are always talking about confidence. Oh, I
Yeah.
need confidence. I need confidence, right? Well, confidence is very fickle. It depends on how you look at it. If you know you need to do 5 things every day, if you check those boxes every day, going into the match or the tournament, you're going to be confident
Yeah.
because you're going to look back and say, I did exactly what I need to do. I followed my trainer's instructions. I followed my nutritionist instructions. I followed my own instructions. I followed, whatever instructions I've been given. I've checked all the boxes. So going into the game, I'm more confident versus if you look back, well, I could have practiced some more. I could have eaten a little better. I could have gotten a little more sleep. That's when confidence escapes you.
Mm-hmm.
But when you do what you need to do and you know you're doing it, you can go into whatever trial you're going into with 100% confidence. And
Yeah.
that's the difference between, you know, getting out of a slump. If you need to check 20 boxes a week and you're in a slump, whatever. I'm going to check the 20 boxes next week and hopefully I'm out of the slump. But if I'm not, I know eventually I will be. And so now it's just part of the cycle. It's not a downfall, it's part of the wheel.
Actually, yeah, and it's actually the learning zone. You're going to come out of that slump more equipped than what you were when you before you went into it, likely.
Well, and you're more likely the next time you go into a slump, you can come out of it.
Yeah, preaching. Okay, last one. Perfection is impossible, especially in golf. That I added that. Um, but then you write, progression is what you're looking for. And I love this because you know the old thing, 1% better every day. I've seen this transpire with elite level athletes and beginner golfers. So, not searching for perfection, just looking for progression. Put a bow on the conversation with that, please.
So you're right. You're never going to be perfect. And there's always going to be somebody who's better than you.
Mm-hmm.
So your goal is progress, right? Like you said, 1% better every day. There's 1,000 euphemisms for it and stuff like that. And so what you're really looking for is you're looking for consistent growth, right? And a lot of people think growth is a vertical line or it's a straight line, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not. It's ups and downs and ups and downs and ups and downs. But when you pull back and you take the big picture view, it looks like a straight line because you're not zoomed in on the details, right? And here's the thing that this happens to a lot of players, especially average athletes or guys who are starting out. You start out and you stink. You're horrible.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit of effort makes you a lot better. And a little more effort makes you even better, right? But what happens is let's say for every 10 units of work you put in, you grow a level, right? And so you're willing to put in 10 units of work. Bing, 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 you're going up, you're going up. You reach a certain level, and all of a sudden, you now got to put in 20 units of work to increase that level. And then you get a little better. Now I got to put in 100 units of work to increase that level. And now I got to put in 1,000 units of work to increase that level, which is why most athletes start out on this trajectory where they're like, oh man, I'm going to be the best. I'm learning everything. I'm getting better. And then all of a sudden they seem to stagnate.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And they're not really stagnating. They're just not improving as fast as they could. But you have to know that your progress is what you're really looking for. And as you continue to measure your metrics, journal, your activities and your results and everything like that, you have the ability to plan out what you need to do in the future. And that's why like camps are so huge. Like you go to a basketball camp and the parents are like, yeah, that $500 was really worth it because my kid improved. And then they send him to the same camp next year And they're like, they didn't get any better.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because that they're already beyond that skill level, right? They have to go to an elite camp or they have to put in more work. And so, yeah, if you're chasing perfection, you you're never going to make it, because even if you're at your level of perfection, you can always get better. So you want to chase progress and not perfection. And once you understand that somebody's always going to be better than you, even if you're the top player right now, you're not going to stay there. You're
Yeah.
going to have a bad game or whatever. And so once you start looking for progress, that's when you take progress, you take consistency, you take your nutrition, you take your sleep, you take your training. Once you lock those 5 things in, your game is never the same. It's
Mm.
never the same.
It's for the golfers, this is where it's really changed at the highest level and it's filtering down because on the PGA Tour, they have a metric called strokes gained. And it's a comparative to the field, not just par, the score you're supposed to shoot. And you see golfers now, because of strokes gained, they're realizing that if I gain a quarter of a stroke out of my bunker play, and if I gain a tenth of a stroke on the greens, and I do this and I do all of that 4 days in a row, I've picked up 2 or 3 strokes in the field, which is mammoth at any sort of level. So what coach there says, people, is so important. If you just got better by a stroke a month, think about where your handicap is likely to be by year's end. Okay, so
Yeah.
I've put the bow on it. I want to leave you with, I want to ask you this. I think I know the answer, but if I had to say to you, all right, Coach Riley, what is it that you know for sure? This is going on your headstone. What would that be?
That's a tough one. I've never thought about that.
Ask it to the folks that intrigue me.
Um, if I had to put something on my headstone, I don't know if I would want it to be about myself or if I would want to be. No, I know what it would be.
All right.
Greatness. No, not greatness. Success, being successful. Here it is. Here it is. Being successful are great things that you do for yourself. Being significant is great things that you do for other people.
Yeah, you
And
go.
if you're significant, you'll become successful. I want to leave this earth knowing that I've changed people's lives for the better. I want to know that in when they're 40 years old, sitting around the Thanksgiving dinner table, talking with their family, they might bring up some game that they did really good in. And was I a very small, integral part of that because they read a post or they got a good night's sleep before the game or whatever? I really believe the meaning of life is helping others with struggles that you've already overcome. Maybe that's what goes on my headstone. I don't know.
There you go.
Pick a couple, make it a big headstone.
No, it's fantastic. I was looking at you and I look at the thread, and there's this overriding message there that it was basically going, as I read through it, and I hear what you're saying, because you're such a giver as a coach, but you basically going, you're the architect of your own destiny. Um, do the right things consistently. You stack the odds in your favor. You're not going to win all the time, but you're going to start to notice that you will win more. And then confidence comes from doing the right things all the time. And it sounds so trite and it sounds so mundane and it sounds so unsexy that no one wants to do it. But it's the reality of people like Kobe Bryant and all these other athletes you feature on your site. It's what everyone does. It's what's done in the shadows and not in the spotlight that defines who they are.
Yeah, average athletes think fundamentals are what beginners do. Great athletes know that fundamentals are what great athletes do.
Mm-hmm. There you go. Coach Riley, at 6 a.m. practice is the Instagram handle. You've got hundreds of thousands of followers over there. Is there anywhere else people can find you, like a website or any other social that you're up to? Podcast. I see you got a microphone. Are you podcasting as well?
I do. Yeah, I started a podcast. I need to really pick that up. I haven't done as many episodes as I'd like. What I do on the podcast, and it's like if you just search 6 a.m. practice on Spotify or iHeartRadio, what I do is I interview people that are experts in the field of anything athletic related. So nutritionists, sleep experts, coaches, stuff like that. 6ampractice.com. There's a couple of things out there, but mainly it's social media on Instagram. I answer all my DMs. If you got any questions, feel free to reach out to me. anything I can do to help you out in any way, it's an honor to be part of that trip. And I'm just blessed to be on your podcast. I mean, who'd have thunk it? I'm just a guy who lives up in Alaska, and here I am talking to, you know, just it the social media has created such a terrific thing in the world where people are looking for help. I'm like I said, I'm just blessed to be part of it.
Well, look, you were saying you were an assistant coach or parent coach or whatever it was to your boys. You've got a coach's heart, and I think the world is fortunate to have you on social media. And I'm thankful that you would join us. So thank you very much.
Absolutely, it's been my pleasure.